Hello, I'm Kevin Becca, technical editor of Mix Magazine. This installment of Seminars on Demand is focused on guitar recording techniques. Today, we're at the Conservatory of Recording Arts to cover the basics of acoustic and electric guitar recording and also talk about some options you as an engineer have after the recording is done.
It's important to note that any recording has to start by getting it right at the source. When recording guitar, new strings are a must. Also, having the instrument set up properly so it plays well and is in tune over the length of the neck is also important. Once the guitar plays and sounds the best it can, you can then concentrate on capturing that sound. The miking of acoustic guitar is similar to the techniques you'd use for close miking other instruments. In general, the best results will be achieved with condenser or ribbon mics, with the caveat that because of a ribbon's low output, it's best to use them when the guitar is being strummed rather than quietly finger-picked. The first decision is whether to mic the guitar in mono or stereo. For me, miking in stereo is always preferred because you can always sum it to mono later. The first technique is placing two condensers in an XY pattern in front of the guitar. Keep in mind that optimal placement varies from instrument to instrument, but there are some general rules that can be followed. Because the mic's on-axis point is 45 degrees from off-center, the sound hole is a good middle point to aim the array. Placement is subjective, so setting the mics and having the player move across the center point while you listen in the control room is a good way to find the sweet spot. Whether the guitar will be the icing on a fully produced track or used as a solo instrument will determine how much body and low end you can get away with. Once you like the sound, let the player know that the current position is best and have them choose a visual reference in case they move or need to take a break. The panning of the two channels can vary depending on the sound field you wish to convey. The next technique is using two condensers placed as a spaced pair. The 3-to-1 rule applies here, with the distance between the mics being 3 times the distance from the source. Other than that, the rules are general and depend on the guitar. Aiming any mic directly at the sound hole, perpendicular to the back of the guitar, tends to be boomy, so it's best to stay away from that area. You can EQ the guitar using the mics by keeping in mind that the area above the sound hole towards the neck sounds thinner than the area below. Another spaced pair technique is to point one mic at the player's fingers at an angle so as not to get the boomy sound hole effect, and the other mic at the bottom end of the guitar. This works very well when summing to mono, especially if you filter the top mic to thin it out and add the bottom mic to provide the low end. The theory is that one mic offers the sound of the picking in the strings while the other provides the body. Both the XY and the spaced pair arrays can be pulled back from the guitar if more of the room is desired in the mix. Speaking of the room, if recording in a tight space and room interaction is a problem, building a deadening wall around the player with gobos or even blankets over mic stands will help reduce this effect. The last close miking technique involves using a ribbon mic, in this case, the Royer SF24 stereo ribbon pictured here. The SF24 is an active ribbon that has a much higher output than a standard dynamic mic. This lessens the noise you'd encounter when making up gain. Ribbons in general tend to soften the hard edges of a strummed guitar and impart a more compressed feel to the entire track. When recording a tube guitar amp as your source, making sure the tubes are properly biased will give you the best results. The bias adjustment must be made when changing tubes and as tubes wear out over time. Bias is a negative voltage sent to the tube that makes it operate to its full potential. If the bias is too high or low, the result may be a noisy amp that will not sound its best. A solid-state amplifier has none of the issues associated with tubes. Moving coil, ribbon, and condenser mics can be used for miking a guitar cabinet. If using two mics up close, it's important that they both be placed equidistant from the speakers to keep them in phase. In addition to close miking, room mics can be used to take advantage of the ambient space in a studio. These room mics can then be added to taste for the final mix. There are several ways to mic a speaker, but if there's a grill cloth, you first need to know where the cone resides. Shining a flashlight on the front of the amp will quickly reveal where the center of the speaker is. A small piece of tape can be put there to keep the orientation correct, while you go search out the location of another speaker. One of the best places to place the mic is right at the junction of the center dust cover and the speaker cone. The mic can be naturally EQ'd by placing it on or off axis to the source. Another nice trick is to mic the back of the cabinet, provided that it's not sealed. This will impart a very interesting tone that can also be mixed in if desired. If the sound is too boomy or bass heavy, decouple the amp from the floor by placing it on a small riser, or moving the mic back from the cabinet to diminish proximity effect. If you are using an amp with a separate head and speaker, a long speaker run can be made to the studio, allowing the player to dial in the sound from the listener's position in the control room. In the past, using a combo amp, that is speakers and an amp in one enclosure, meant the player had to be in the same room as his amp. However, an interesting new tool from Little Labs solves that problem. The STD Mercenary Edition allows you to use long microphone cables or studio tie lines to extend your guitar cable without the loss of tone and increased noise associated with long instrument cable runs. In general, DI boxes aren't the best way to capture the electric guitar as a single source. However, with the influx of guitar amp simulation plugins such as Line 6's Amp Farm, Nigel from Universal Audio, Amplitube, and Logic's Guitar Amp Pro, using a DI to capture a raw track for later processing is good insurance. Of course, just like a microphone, choosing a DI is important to the outcome of the recording. The choices break down into active or passive categories. A passive DI uses a transformer and needs no power to operate, while an active DI can be powered by a battery, phantom power, or tubes. Some DIs double as reampers and splitters, giving you a number of options when recording. Reamping is the ability to re-record your signal through an amp after the session. The technique involves routing the track back through the reamp box and then to the guitar amp. This is a great way to change or add tones after the session is over. A splitter allows you to send the guitar signal to a second amp during the session, which offers another palette of tones. Whether you're reamping or splitting, the same miking rules apply.
Thank you for visiting Mix Magazine's Seminars on Demand. We hope some of the techniques we've described here today will help you make the right decisions next time you're presented with the task of recording guitar.